Okay, today we thought we'd show you how to build your own Boxcab electric, similar to the New York Central one that I built. Some of the things that you're going to need is you're going to need a 7-inch caboose, a 4-wheel caboose. You also need this scale wheel caboose. I've already done some of the steps, but I'll explain exactly how I did them. You'll also need an E7 motor, and you'll need the earlier ones that didn't have the traction tires, that doesn't have that large weight, because the large weight, I have one right here, this motor won't work because the large weight is too big to go inside the caboose shell. But if you can use the two older ones, I would prefer to use the one that doesn't have the flange in case you want to use it on Lionel switches. But if you're like me and you only run Marx track, or you don't run any switches, you're fine. So we've got that done, and I removed the tab and slot coupler from the E7 motor, so that won't interfere. Then we can set that aside. And then the next thing that you want to do is you want to take your caboose apart. The easiest way to remove the tab and slots is just take a thin screwdriver right up underneath it and slowly lift it up to position that it'll come out, and that way you won't break the tabs off, because you want to keep those. We're going to need them to put it back together. Then you remove it. And after you do that, you want to take this one had the caboose copula. I've already, copula, whatever it's pronounced, I've already removed that. And then the next thing is to take either a dremel, or I've used also tin snips to cut these off right about there, right about even with the rest of the frame. I even cut this part even with the frame, because the E7, I use the plastic truck covers. So you remove those, all four, and your frame then should look like that. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to make it so that the E7 motor will fit in there. And as you can see, here's the E7 motor. It goes from the holes that would be for trucks is about how long it is. So you can just take a permanent marker and measure that out to make it wide enough. Don't remove that tab, but just go to the inside of that tab as you cut your square, and it should end up with something that looks about like that. Okay, so we've cut out the part for the E7 and motor, and we can see that it should fit in there quite easily. And that's how you'll put it together. Actually, what holds this whole thing is the E7 motor. This and the shell sits down on it, and then we've drilled a hole through the top for the mount screw. The E7 won't be turning inside it, so it'll be permanent, so you don't have to worry about any swing or radius in here. The next part is to prepare the shell from the scale caboose. We take the scale caboose off. We won't be needing that anymore. And then I cut this right across where the hole is. I just cut it straight, and that's so that we can lengthen the frame of our Boxcab, so it would look like that. And then we'll save this piece because we might be able to use it to make swing arms. We also want to save the scale trucks, because we'll be using them, so it'll kind of look like this with the E7 motor in the middle and these sticking out, and these will be able to swing back and forth. So to prepare this to attach the extensions that we made, what I did was I took a pair of pliers, a needle nose, and just made a little lip out of, well, if I can, right here, out of this section. I just took a little needle nose pliers and pried them up like that, so that the extension can sit on there. And then we'll move to the next step, where we'll actually make them permanent with steel stick epoxy. Okay, so I've lined up the extension with the frame, and I'm going to use Weld steel stick epoxy. This stuff really works great. It's a 2-part epoxy. Just take a plastic knife. Don't use your metal ones like I have, because it'll stick to them. You'll have to grind it off of them. Cut a section about like that, and then you just mix it up in your hand. You have to work quickly once you have it mixed up, because it sets up pretty quick. But it sets up really hard, and that's what makes it so great, is you don't have to sit around and wait 24 hours. It's ready to go within about 10 minutes. Make sure you mix it thoroughly and quickly. Okay, and once you feel it start getting warm in your hand, you line it up, your plate up, and just get it stuck up there like that. Get it filled right in. Make sure you keep it below the little lip there. And kind of make sure your frame's lined up, which it is. Fill in, don't be afraid to fill in these little holes, but don't fill in the ones that go for your tabs for your caboose shell, which I just did there, so I just unfilled them really quick. That should make it nice and straight. It looks like it's lined up really good, and we'll let that give that a couple of minutes to harden, and then we'll do the other side. To prepare the caboose shell, you'll need the rear weight from a 1666 locomotive. Take the rivet out, obviously, and then you need to drill the hole so it's large enough to accept an E7 motor mount screw. Now the E7 motor mount screw that comes with it is 1/4 inch. I think it's 8/32 1/4 inch, and it's too short. It's about 1/8 of an inch too short for this project. So I had to find another bolt of the same size and just cut it I've cut this one at 3/8 so that it'll fit through. Take the 1666 after you've drilled it out, and you line it up with this where the copula whatever went through, the middle one, and you line the hole up, and then you take your drill and continue to drill gently through the shell so that it'll fit, and then you should be able to take your 8/32 screw or whatever size, and should be big enough, just big enough to hold the motor there. So it should be about like that. Then take the screw back out, and the next step will be to permanently mount the weight to the roof of the inside of the shell. And again, that we'll use JB Weld steel stick. This stuff is really great. I use it all the time. It dries quickly, it dries hard. It's good stuff. So you just take again a plastic knife and cut the amount that you'll need, and we'll demonstrate that next. Okay, before we get much farther into the project, I want to highlight one thing to make sure that your motor mount screw isn't too long. 3/8 to 1/2 inch should be the longest. If you notice, the field coil is sitting right underneath where the screw comes through, and if it's too long and you tighten it up too far, you'll stick your screw right into the field coil and you could burn it out. Okay, so the roof of the caboose is beveled. So what we need to do is we need to get the steel stick underneath this plate and up against the roof, and that'll give the roof some support when you go to mount the motor and tighten down the screw. It won't collapse the roof. So again, we take a piece of steel stick and we cut it. When you apply it, you want to make sure that you don't put any that will cover either that hole or the hole that you drilled in the roof of the caboose. It's just to be on both sides of this plate so that the plate doesn't collapse the roof when you tighten it up onto the motor. So we're mixing it up. There'll just be some support. Get it like that. Maybe cut it in 2 pieces. Put it on both sides of the hole. And make sure it doesn't go in the hole. And that should. Then you just one stick to me, of course. Stick it like that. Leave it up. Remember, this stuff sets up quickly, so get your hole lined up. Shove it up underneath, and then just gently push it down. I've got a little bit coming in the hole, so the best thing to do is just take a screwdriver and I'll open that up. Push it right up against that plate on both sides. Make sure your plate's in there straight like you want it and level. And again, just let the steel stick set up good. Usually within 15 minutes it's really good and hard. Then once you get once that hardens, what you may want to do is put some steel stick on either side of the plate, but not to where it will interfere with the top of your E7 motor. So you just along here and along there to make sure that plate doesn't pop out later on, because you want it to stay in there, so when you go in to seal the holes, these extra holes in the roof, you don't pop that plate out. Make sure that's all the way flush, which it is. Okay, so we'll let that set up and we'll go to the next step. Okay, so I mixed up another gob of steel stick. I took a little piece for the inside of this side of the plate and for the other side of the plate, just to make sure that plate doesn't come loose, and then test it, make sure that your steel stick that you just put in won't interfere with the motor, and it doesn't, so we're all set there. And so that should make sure that plate doesn't pop out on me. And then the next thing that we'll do is we'll let that set up really good, is we'll go back to our original frame, and we're going to put some steel stick across the tops of our joints here, just to reinforce them, and then you can fill in this little part, and then later on we can just gently grind it with a Dremel. That's my weapon of choice. So again, you take your knife, cut a little piece of the steel stick. You're not going to need a lot of it. Again, we mix it up. Get it good and mixed. And we can probably start out with a small piece. Don't push down on our seam here. Just hold it up in your hands like that. Fill it in. Take it across. Make sure you fill in all the holes. Just make a nice little repair there like that. Yeah, it wants to stick to my hands. There we go. And this is still pliable, so I can fill in this section as well with this other piece. I work fast enough and go across the seam. If not, you can always mix up some more. And I think I've got it. And that should make a good strong weld to reinforce. And it also fills in that little wheel well part that was with the scale caboose. Make sure everything stays straight, which it is. It looks pretty good. Okay, so now we'll go on to the next step. Okay, so the next step that we need to do is to start working on filling in the holes that were left by the removing of the cupola off the top. So what I use is a two-part epoxy called Milliput. It's slower drying because I don't want it to dry fast. I want to be able to smooth these out so that I don't do any damage to the roof. If you want to leave, if you're not planning on repainting this, you could leave it as pacemaker. I know there's Baltimore and Ohio, Southern Pacific, NKP. Like I said, if you don't want to repaint, you have the option of just filling these in, and then we can just touch up. So the Milliput dries slower. It's again a two-part epoxy. I'm mixing it up in my hands, and then we're just going to put it just enough in to fill them in, and make sure you don't accidentally fill in your hole here that we made for the mounting screw. So we can just kind of get that there, just enough to push through there, kind of like that. You can do the same here, just little pieces of it. Just make sure you have it mixed good, and just kind of see if you can fill it in with your hand, or like that. Don't leave any excess if you can help it. And fill in all these holes. One thing about the Milliput is it gives you more time. You can just fill this, and you just do it all the way around. Okay. Some of the extra Milliput putty we can use to fill in some of the seams that we've left that we didn't fill in with JB Weld steel stick. So we can just use it like that. You can make it so that we can round it here or make a different shape here later on. but it'll help reinforce and fill in, and waste not, want not. Push that in like that. Just kind of give it a little shape that we can use our Dremel to reshape it. Plus, you also want to fill in the 2 notches on each end here, so you can use the milliput putty. Works good for that. Come up from underneath like that. You just push it down with your thumb to fill them in. There's one. So the great thing about the milliput putty, the great thing about the JB Weld steel stick is it sets up quickly. The great thing about the milliput putty is it doesn't, so you can always use, and it's good and strong too, like the won't stick to my hand. Okay, push it in there, push it up like that, and just and one more piece for the other side. Okay, so once again, now we can set the frame aside, and the next step will be to make swing arms to attach our scale wheel so that they can swing out like that. The motor will be permanent, but these will have swing arms so that they can swing out for the radiuses of the turns. Okay, the next step is to make swing arms for your scale trucks, and then mount them to the frame. That piece that you cut out of the frame to fit the motor in, you can use that to make your swing arms. It should be about 3/4 of an inch wide, as you notice this one is, and probably 1.5 inches long. These holes are 1 inch apart. This is the one that will go into the mount that we're going to make. I used one of these brass bushings that from an E7 motor to make my mount for the frame for the swing arm. I also found a screw that's small enough to go in the hole here in the bushing. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take another piece of JB Weld steel stick, and we'll mount it so that they're even as we did this one. We'll mount it right here, and we'll also put some JB Weld steel stick down in the hole, and then we'll attach our screw. And just before the JB Weld steel stick hardens, we'll just slowly, carefully back that screw out, and that'll make threads, so it'll hold it in there. Okay, so the JB Weld sets up pretty quick, so make sure as you're putting it in, you got your bushing where you want it. I have it right here at the edge, so it's equal length as the other one that I did. Then let it harden first, and then we'll add a little JB Weld steel stick to the hole, and we'll add our screw. The extra steel stick, don't let it go to waste. You can stick it up in here where it won't interfere with anything. The added weight will actually help the Boxcab pull better, so added weight of the steel stick is actually a plus. Now we'll attach the trucks after the steel stick is hardened. There's a screwdriver. Just screw it down tight enough to hold the truck in place, but the truck should still be able to swivel. And the steel stick should hold that screw right there in place. And the truck still swivels. Looks good. And now we can attach the motor. We'll take our E7 motor. And we'll put that in. So the truck's out of the way. When you put your motor in, make sure that the headlight terminal doesn't touch the body anywhere. You don't want it shorting out against the frame. We'll find the hole is right there. Drop down our screw. We'll have to grab a screwdriver. Okay, so as you're tightening down the motor mount screw, just get it snug. Don't tighten it too far. You don't want to distort or put extra pressure on the roof or your mount piece. So now it's on there. Make sure it's in there straight. And from here on, the rest of the project is yours. Whatever you prefer. You can take the ends of that scale caboose that I was using and cut them. Just cut the ladders off. to use for end pieces. You can use orange surveyor flags to make your own railings. That the wire that holds the flag is just about perfect for these. I'm going to use these Lionel reproduction pantographs. I just drilled a hole right here where this is and where that mark is on the roof. That was nice of Marx to use that litho to mark it for us, so they'll be even. Right here where the caboose cupola came through, I'm going to sand this a little better, but I'll also add a bell. Just drill that out. And if you want to, you can use the E7 covers and screws to make it look like a triaxle, which the Marx plastic diesel is an E7. It's not an F7. It's supposed to be a triaxle. There's a little faux piece right here. And just to dress it up, and I'll sand my work here on the base. I'll paint the base flat black. I might even actually tape off the roof. If you want to, you can leave the pacemaker if that's what you want yours to be. I know they also made Santa Fe, Baltimore and Ohio, NKP, Southern Pacific, whatever you want that road name to be. You can just leave that right on there and just tape the roof and after you do your little repairs here. One last note I wanted to add is add your motor mount plate before making these repairs. The reason is if you make the repairs first and then you try to add the motor mount plate, if you over tighten it, it'll pop your repairs right out. I already learned that with the first one I did, so I'll pass that on to you. But other than that, God bless. Remember Jesus is Lord and keep having fun.